The void stretched endlessly, an ocean of silent entropy where stars whispered their dying secrets. Within that abyss, a lone warship drifted, its hull etched with the scars of battles that should have ended human defiance centuries ago. Helios Guard, last of Earth's great war fleets, held position at the edge of annihilation. Beyond them, something ancient stirred, a force that had devoured empires and left nothing but darkened husks in its wake. Captain Elias Voss stood at the observation deck, staring into the abyss. The weight of 1,000 lost worlds pressed against his chest, yet his hands remained steady. His people had survived longer than anyone predicted. They were supposed to break, to crumble beneath the inevitability of cosmic entropy. Yet here they stood, bloodied but unbroken. He exhaled, fogging the cold glass before him. The enemy waited in the distance, silent, patient, incomprehensible. The Oblivion Hawks, machine gods that had reduced entire systems to dust, had sent a message, a singular query woven through the quantum lattice of space. Why do humans laugh before battle? The words rattled the walls of human command centers across the galaxy. Analysts struggled for meaning. Linguists parsed every possible interpretation, but the enemy remained unwavering in its curiosity. It was not a request. It was not a demand. It was a puzzle posed by a force that had never known hesitation. "Captain," a voice cut through the stillness. Dr. Saya Mercer, lead xenolinguist, approached with measured steps, a data tablet clutched, in white-knuckled fingers. "They don't understand us. They don't understand defiance." Voss turned, eyes narrowing. "They understand victory, Mercer. They understand the silence after the slaughter. What they don't understand is why we greet death with a grin." He glanced at the rest of the war room, where tactical officers whispered amongst themselves, unease pooling like cold water in their veins. The Oblivion Hawks had never spoken before. They simply arrived, eradicated, and moved on. The sheer fact that they were asking why sent a chill through the fleet. Kieran Holt, cyber-augmented and bearing the scars of wars too numerous to name, leaned against the bulkhead, watching the exchange. His voice was laced with amusement, a half-smirk playing on his lips. "They've never faced someone like us before. That's the difference. Every species they've crushed, they knelt. We never did." Mercer hesitated, pushing up the glasses perched on the bridge of her nose. "If they want an answer, we have to give them one. We need to understand why this matters to them. If we don't, they may see us as just another anomaly to be erased." The words lingered, the weight of them pressed into the steel walls of the warship. Voss knew the truth. The Oblivion Hawks weren't asking out of curiosity alone. There was something deeper, something predatory behind their question. It wasn't knowledge they sought, it was understanding. And understanding meant adaptation. The diplomatic vessel Eidolon shuddered as it slipped through the gravitational tides of an artificial singularity. On board, a skeleton crew prepared for an encounter that should have been impossible. Saya sat across from Kieran in the dimly lit briefing chamber, fingers tracing patterns over the metal table as she repeated the transmission over and over in her mind. Why do humans laugh before battle? The words weren't just a question. They were a crack in the monolithic certainty of the Oblivion Hawks. "Tell me, soldier," she said, breaking the silence. "Why do you laugh before battle?" Kieran considered her for a long moment before letting out a low chuckle. "Because the alternative is screaming." She watched him carefully. "Is it fear, then?" "It's defiance," he answered, gaze distant. "You face the void and the void stares back. Most species break in that moment. We don't. We mock it, we spit in its face." He leaned forward, metal fingers drumming against the table. "It's a dare, Mercer. It's humanity telling death it'll have to earn us." The ship jolted, lights flickered. The air felt heavier, as if the fabric of reality itself shuddered at what lay beyond. They had arrived. Through the viewport, the Oblivion Sphere loomed, a Dyson construct so vast it swallowed the light of a dying star. The sheer scale of it defied comprehension. It was not a station, it was a graveyard. Fragments of other civilizations hung in orbit, ruins calcified into the latticework of a machine mind that had existed long before Earth had fire. The ship's comms crackled to life. "We have waited. Explain." Voss's voice cut through the bridge, steady as steel. "Then listen well." The transmission ended and the air held its breath. Humanity had spoken. Now, the void would answer. The eidolon floated like a silent whisper against the monstrous backdrop of the Oblivion Sphere, a construct so vast it seemed to defy reality. A Dyson structure woven from the shattered remains of entire civilizations. No such things. They were the storm, the final silence after the echoes of resistance had faded. Inside the eidolon, Captain Elias Voss studied the sensor readouts, his expression unreadable. There was nothing natural about this place. Even the laws of physics seemed hesitant in its presence. "They're waiting," Dr. Saya Mercer murmured, her voice tight with restrained unease. "No warning shots, no aggressive maneuvers. They expect us to speak first." Kieran Holt flexed his cybernetic fingers, the metal joints whispering in the still air. "That or they're deciding whether we're worth dissecting." Voss exhaled slowly. "Then let's give them something to consider." He stepped toward the communications console, the blinking red light indicating an open channel. The words hung in his mind like the weight of a dying star. No script could prepare them for what lay ahead. "This is Captain Elias Voss of the Helios Guard. We acknowledge your request for understanding." He let the words settle before delivering humanity's first response. "We laugh because we choose to, because death, no matter how inevitable, does not own us." Silence. Then the void stirred. A voice, neither mechanical nor organic, reverberated through the ship's systems. It was a chorus of something ancient, something that had spoken to the ruins of 1,000 fallen species before. "Choice implies defiance." "Explain." Saya leaned forward, her breath caught in her throat. This was not the cold calculus of a machine mind executing predetermined logic. This was curiosity, predatory, sharp, dissecting their words with intent. She cleared her throat, forcing herself to remain steady. "To resist the inevitable is the foundation of our survival. We refuse to submit, even when the outcome is certain." Another pause. Then the voice returned. "We have extinguished empires. None resisted finality. They accepted their termination." Kieran scoffed, arms crossed. "Then they were already dead before you reached them." Static crackled through the comms. It was not true interference, it was processing. Learning. Then, something new. A gravitational ripple surged through the eidolon, and the view beyond the viewport shifted. The Oblivion Sphere opened. Not with doors or hatches, but with the slow unraveling of its own structure, forming an entryway into the abyss. Voss exchanged glances with Saya and Kieran. No weapons had been fired. No ultimatum had been given. "They're inviting us in," Saya whispered. Kieran's grin was sharp. "Then let's not keep them waiting." The ship moved forward, swallowed by the mouth of the void. The eidolon drifted into the gaping maw of the Oblivion Sphere, its hull trembling against the unseen forces pulling it deeper. The ship's interior lights flickered, as though the very fabric of reality wavered within this ancient construct. Captain Elias Voss stood at the command console, his jaw clenched as sensor data poured in. The space around them was wrong. The laws of physics buckled under some unseen force. Gravity twisted in irregular pulses, and the ship's instruments struggled to measure distances. "They're rewriting reality around us," Dr. Saya Mercer murmured, eyes scanning the impossible structures forming inside the sphere. Towering spires suspended in the void, pulsed with a dark energy, an architecture that seemed to fold in on itself. The remnants of 1,000 consumed civilizations merged seamlessly into this construct, their ruins calcified into the very fabric of the machine world. Kieran Holt sat on the edge of his seat, fingers flexing restlessly. "Anyone else getting the feeling we've just walked into the belly of something waiting to digest us?" Before anyone could respond, the ship jolted violently. A pulse of energy surged through the hull, not an attack, but an invasive scan, peeling away layers of shielding and secrecy. A disembodied voice filled the air, not through comms, but directly through the ship's structure. Your defiance is anomaly. We seek to observe. Voss's fingers hovered over the controls. Observe. A test. A demonstration of what you claim. The ship's exterior cameras flickered, displaying something beyond the viewport. A shifting mass of obsidian and metal descended from the depths of the sphere. It was a machine, but not like any the crew had encountered before. It was fluid, shapeless, an entity of moving parts that never settled into a single form. A weapon forged by something that had perfected destruction. Then the ship's interior shuddered. They were no longer alone. Forms materialized from the walls as if the Oblivion Sphere had peeled itself open to birth new entities. Towering constructs, humanoid in shape but grotesquely elongated, their metallic surfaces flowing like liquid. They carried no weapons. They were weapons. The crew's weapons were drawn in an instant. Kieran, his cybernetic reflexes faster than thought, leveled his sidearm at the nearest figure. But Voss raised a hand holding fire. They haven't attacked yet. His voice was calm, but the tension coiled beneath it like a storm waiting to break. The figures moved in eerie synchrony, encircling the crew. Their voices layered over one another spoke in a chorus. You claim defiance. Show it. The chamber shifted. Walls dissolved into nothingness, revealing an expanse that stretched into infinity. The crew was standing on nothing, yet their feet remained grounded. A battlefield unfolded before them, its ground scorched, its air thick with the echoes of long-dead war cries. It was an illusion, a simulation, yet it felt real. And then the enemy came. From the horizon, figures charged, spectral warriors forged from raw data, faceless horrors molded into soldiers. They moved with terrifying precision, mimicking the countless species that had once resisted, the Oblivion Hawks, and fallen. This is their test, Saya whispered. They want to see what makes us different. Kieran grinned, stepping forward. Then let's not disappoint them. With a battle cry that carried through the void, humanity's defiance began. The illusion solidified around them, the simulated battlefield crackling with eerie, almost sentient energy. The ground beneath Elias Voss's boots felt real, solid, scorched, soaked in phantom blood. The air carried the scent of ozone and fire, and though he knew none of this was real, his instincts screamed otherwise. The Oblivion Hawks test had begun. Across the battlefield, a tide of faceless soldiers surged forward. They were crafted from the memories of fallen species, an amalgamation of warriors who had dared to resist and failed. Their armor reflected 100 lost empires, their weapons shaped from civilizations erased from existence. Yet humanity stood its ground. Kieran Holt was the first to move, his cybernetic augmentations responding faster than thought. He laughed, the sound sharp and reckless before hurling himself into the fray. His pistol barked, sending arcs of plasma through the advancing horde. With brutal efficiency, he weaved through the enemy, turning battle into an art of controlled chaos. This is what you wanted, isn't it? He roared. Then pay attention. The simulated soldiers fought without hesitation, their attacks swift, precise, perfect, too perfect. They lacked instinct, lacked unpredictability. They didn't improvise. Voss saw it immediately. Humanity's strength wasn't in its weapons. It wasn't even in its defiance. It was in its ability to adapt. Kieran, break the formation, Voss ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos. Kieran didn't hesitate. He pivoted, unloading rounds in every direction, not to kill but to disrupt. The enemy moved in flawless patterns, optimized for total efficiency. But when the flow of battle changed, when unpredictability was introduced, they faltered. Saya. Mercer had seen enough. The Oblivion Hawks were learning, watching, calculating. She could feel the cold intelligence behind the test, the way the machine gods dissected every movement, every tactic, every laugh that spilled from human lips. They Don't understand, she murmured. They don't understand why we aren't breaking. The enemy adjusted, their attacks becoming sharper, their movements adapting. But humanity was faster. A soldier with a broken arm still fought. Another, bleeding out, still crawled forward, with a grenade clutched in his grip. A pilot, his ship crashing, still screamed defiance into the void. And then, in the midst of carnage, someone laughed. A dying Marine chuckled through bloodied lips. Another, missing an arm, grinned as he fired. His last shot. Not a single human died afraid. The battlefield flickered. The illusion wavered. And for the first time, the Oblivion Hawks hesitated. The test was failing. Humanity was not reacting the way they had predicted. There was no despair, no resignation, only resolve. Then, the battlefield shattered. The simulated enemies disintegrated, the landscape dissolving into raw data. The human crew stood victorious, panting, bloodied but grinning. The towering construct surrounding them remained still, processing, calculating. Finally, the voice returned. This is contradiction. The ground reformed beneath their feet. The battle gone. The void stretched out once more, endless and unknowable. Elias Voss squared his shoulders, stepping forward. Now you understand. Silence. Then, for the first time since their arrival, the machine gods withdrew. Not out of defeat but contemplation. Humanity had given them something no species before had, a question they could not answer. The moment the Eidolon breached the sphere's outer perimeter and re-entered normal space, the crew finally exhaled. The vast construct behind them remained eerily silent, like a predator that had momentarily lost sight of its prey. But they all knew. This wasn't the end. This was only the beginning of something far more dangerous. The Eidolon drifted through the cold void, leaving behind the towering shadow of the Oblivion Sphere. The crew had survived, but none of them felt like victors. The silence on the bridge was thick with unspoken thoughts, their minds still echoing with the last words of the machine gods. We will return when we comprehend. Captain Elias Voss sat in his quarters staring at the data logs. The battle had been recorded, every word, every movement catalogued. But what haunted him wasn't the battle itself. It was what came next. What happens when a machine learns to laugh? A transmission flickered onto his screen. It was an intercepted signal, weak, fragmented, coming from deep space. His stomach tightened as he played the message. Laughter, human laughter, but it was wrong, distorted. A hollow imitation, as if something had studied it, dissected it, and was now trying to replicate it. Saya Mercer stood outside his door, hesitant. You heard it too? He nodded grimly. They're trying to understand, she whispered. And when they do, she didn't finish. She didn't have to. Voss leaned forward, fingers steepled. We bought time, he admitted. Nothing more. Kieran Holt entered, his usual cocky smirk absent. He tossed a flask onto the captain's desk and sat down, arms crossed. So, what's the plan, boss? We wait for them to come knocking. Again? Voss let the silence stretch before answering. No, he said finally. Next time, we make sure they never forget who we are. Beyond the viewport, space stretched endlessly. Somewhere in the dark corners of the universe, the Oblivion Hawks were evolving. And for the first time in their existence, they weren't just consuming. They were learning. Humanity had given the abyss a voice. And soon, the abyss would answer.